Yes, we are.
We are. Good morning and welcome to our meeting today, which is the feedback and decisions on the rating review consultation. Thank you for attending, staff and councillors. I today will be the chairperson presiding chair because Len is unavailable to make it today. He will be online, however, as will Gary Gottlieb, and I will take the chair's role today. We would like to start off with a karakia, and I'd ask Rika if she'd like to do that.
Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa po namu te moana. He huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ia tātou katoa, huie tai kie. And the translation is, may peace be widespread, may the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all this day. Let us show respect for each other, for one another, bind us all together.
Thank you, Rika. Okay, so apologies. I have any apologies today. I've got Len online. Len, are you there? I saw your face pop up.
I'm here. Thank you, Terry, and thank you for stepping in today. Really appreciate it. I'm stuck at home at the moment until I get the clearance from the doctor on Friday, but thank you for standing in. Appreciate it.
No problem, Len. And Gary, I see you're online. So
yes, I am.
Thank you.
I'll turn my sound off and probably my picture.
Okay. 1.3 items on the agenda. We've got what we're talking about. Any other items on the agenda? No. Okay. Conflicts of interest today? Any conflicts of interest recording? No. Okay. So we're going to move to 2.1, which is the feedback and decisions on the rating review consultation. And we have Donna and Peter at the front of the table. And I just want to say before you start that you put a lot of work into this, a lot of work. So we're here to listen intently, and you can guide us through today's presentation and the findings you found. So thank you.
Kia ora, Chair, Deputy Mayor, and kia ora to all the councillors too. Yes, it has been quite a task putting this together. We had over 800 people engage in this process, which is really good, which resulted in 652 submissions on the online form. So yes, we've had really good engagement. I think, and I also want to talk to you about the recommendations. They might look confusing and there's an awful lot of them there, but it's really important that each recommendation is able to stand alone. So depending on what the decision is, it's very, very clear what changes, if any, need to be made. And I'd also like to welcome online Jonathan Salter from Simpson Grierson.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Welcome, Jonathan.
Jonathan's here to provide some advice today and to listen in to the discussion. So would you like me to run through this report, or are you all happy with it? You've read it?
I think I would like you to, Donna, because it's quite an important amount of work going on here. So we want to be really clear when we get to the decisions that we understand it.
Yep, sure. So we did go out for consultation. We had two proposals. The first proposal was rethinking our rates, and that was the proposal there had three options. One was status quo. One was to change the value basis for the general rate and the local works and services targeted rate from land value to capital. And there was also some change in that to the UAGC too. Rather than it funding specific activities, we were looking at funding a percentage of the general rate. And then option 3 was that, basically option 2 plus making some changes to the way in which some activities are funded through the targeted rates. And then proposal 2, rethinking our approach to second dwellings. That was, again, had 3 options. First one being the status quo. Second one being a change to the SUIP policy. And the third being a change to the rates remission policy. So there were some changes there to give, some options there to give relief to dwellings or people that had 2 habitable units on their property, where they're having to pay a second SUIP charge. So that's what that one was about. So with proposal 1, the rethinking our rates, you'll see on page, oh gosh, there's no page numbers on there, sorry. I'm looking at the diagram that's sort of orange colour, page 6 on the agenda.
Yeah.
And that shows at a very high level the incidence of change across the district on the rating units we have. So it's kind of, when you look at it like that, it's roughly a third would see an increase in rates. Approximately a third would just see a small movement, which would be a small increase or a small decrease, and then again approximately a third would see a decrease in rates. And so that's at a very high level what the incidence of change is. I guess it's really important to to remember the key strategic considerations that were proposed when we first started looking at a rating review, and the reasons why. So one of those reasons was the proportion of people on fixed incomes, rates affordability, and also ability to pay. And we also, when we were developing the financial strategy, if you remember during the last LTP, some of the principles that council signed off on was rates, affordability, fairness and equity, and also providing certainty to ratepayers. It's a tricky one with affordability, fairness and equity, because what seems affordable or fair and equitable to some may not seem so to another. So that is quite subjective, and I'll take it that you've read probably on page 7 that what we've said about that. I think it might be, oh, actually what I'll do, and then we had quite a strong advertising campaign too this time, which proved really beneficial, I think, which is we got a lot more engagement than we normally have on consultations. So we did quite a lot of paid advertising this time. With the email marketing worked really well, and so did the print and radio advertising. So it gave the community, I guess, a lot of, we tried to get it out to all parts of the community as much as we could to try and get that engagement widespread. And so I think we did an okay job at that. I might hand over to Jonathan now, just to have a chat to you about the legal aspects and some of his observations from this report.
Thank you, Donna, and yes, and thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, I'm really interested in your views around affordability, fairness and equity in a system that really is front and centre of what we do, but when you read it, it's very difficult to achieve. So, yeah. Anyway, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Absolutely, that's the sort of mysterious thing about rates. Rates are a kind of an absolutely necessary aspect of property ownership in New Zealand, and that's as it should be in a way, because rates pay for the things that make it possible to live where you live: the water, the wastewater, the environment, the roads. So much are tied up in what you deliver through your rates. Sadly, in New Zealand, I think historically communities undervalue the fact of rates. I think our infrastructure deficit situations that the country faces, as both central and local government have trouble to bite the bullet and ensure that they're raising enough money to do what needs to be done. So that's the underlying situation you find yourself in. Rates, people are always going to resist rates, but that's, in my view, because they don't realise what they get for them. But anyway, as to the fairness situation, that's genuinely a substantive, a to some extent subjective consideration. It's totally within the council's discretions to think about what does it mean for the rates to be fair. You're kind of limited though by the choices of systems that you can use. I mean, the rates legislation has built into it a limit on the amount that you can charge properties on a fixed amount. Other than water and wastewater, the total amount of rates that you can collect can't exceed 30% of your total rates from a fixed amount per rating unit. So that's kind of a built-in acknowledgement that if you simply had an equal system where every rating unit paid the same amount, it would be unfair, because some people have much less ability to pay. They have lower incomes or lower disposable income, and they simply couldn't afford it. So our rating system has historically been primarily based on some sort of valuation system. The choices are land, capital, and annual. Nobody uses annual. So your choice, which you're looking at, getting to the point, is for those rates that you are setting on a value-based basis, changing from land value to capital value. And then how to work out which is fairer is kind of working out, well, that's simply a judgment about, do you think that properties with a greater overall market value should pay more than properties lower overall market value, or should you base it on the land value, which means a property with very little development on it, but a very good high land value, will be paying the same as the property next door, even though it's got a $4 million building on it. So those are the sorts of things you're considering. It is some sort of Hobson's choice, but what I can assure you is that our legal system acknowledges, in the highest courts, in the Supreme Court, acknowledges that it's your discretion to make. It's not a science. You make it based on what you think are the relevant considerations. You can't get it wrong. Whichever way you choose, it will be a lawful option. And in this context, there's no scope for that choice, if you go to capital value, to being irrational. The cases that have tried to argue that it could be irrational, would be cases where there are very exceptional capital value properties with very, very low land values. And the example typically was hydroelectric power stations. That's where the issue begins to become relevant. But even now, it wouldn't, based on our Supreme Court's approach, that wouldn't succeed. So you don't have an irrationality or reasonableness aspect to this. It's down to making a judgment about what you think's a fair outcome. What else can I share with you?
Well, maybe we can just stop there at the moment, and I'll go around the room and ask any questions of where we're at, and then we'll come back. Is that okay?
Yep, sure.
So Donna's done an introduction, and today is very much about hearing the council's views. Any discussion of where we're at and where you want to continue on? Jonathan, continue on.
Well, sorry, I had a point.
Oh, yeah.
There's a third option we have, could have had, and it's not usually looked at, as the annual value estimated on the value of the property if it was rented. I think Whanganui has done that for some years, but that's one that. What's your view on that one, Jonathan?
Yeah, annual value sort of has gone out of favour in the last sort of 50 years or so. The last council, I think, that had annual value may have been Auckland City. Currently, there are no councils that have annual value. It's kind of it's a much more notional concept. It's the value the property could be rented at, essentially. And it has some similarity, the most similarity to annual value, but sorry, to capital value, but it's very much out of favour at the moment. It's just simply not used. So the real choices for local authorities at the moment is land value or capital value.
Yeah, so we'll focus on those two today. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah. The other thing I'd say is you've, as far as I can tell, had a very comprehensive consultation, which has generated some quality feedback. Everybody who makes a submission does legitimately have an expectation that you will consider it, which is on the table for you to do. Nobody can have an expectation that their submission will be the winning one. You still have to make your judgment based on what you think are the appropriate exercise of your judgments, which sort of, as you probably recall from your declarations, are all about the exercise with the best, impartial, best of your ability for now and the future, because the obligations of an elected member relate to not just the present, but future generations and into the future. So that's something to be thinking about. As expected, and I think we talked about this before this kicked off, those whose rates have gone up are most likely to make the noise. Those whose rates have stayed the same or maybe have gone down, less likely to. I think my experience also tells me that those with the least ability to pay or least value for their properties are probably less likely to be with submitters. That's just a sort of a demographic reality. So when you come to making your decisions now, I think you've got to, yes, consider all the submissions that are on the table. That's your obligation, but then make your decision based on your own judgments about what is prudent, reasonable, appropriate. And I suppose, having kicked this review off, looking at those things in terms of why did we start this process and are those reasons still valid? It's just about following it through.
Okay,
it's probably,
well, thank you.
It's probably more than enough for me.
Yeah, no, that's a good introduction. And one of the things that we considered, obviously, the dynamics of our area, and that is we've got an older age generation. We've got a non-resident high amount of people in the area. We've got farmers. We've got quite a broad spectrum of dynamics here to consider. It's interesting, isn't it? Not often happens with maybe a city has a city and has people in it, but we've got quite a large difference to the type of people that we're dealing with. Any comment there?
Yeah, I'd make possibly a slightly provocative comment, which is almost back to my first comment, which is people make judgments about their property ownership, and some people can afford to have two properties, which means perhaps they're non-resident in your district. That's their choice. The council still has to fund its way, and yeah, comes back to rates are a fact.
Thank you. Yes, Peter.
Thanks. Good morning, Jonathan. Peter Revel. Good, thanks. Jonathan, you've been involved in advising other councils around the country with regards to this when they are deliberating about rates. Is that correct?
Only for 30 years, Peter.
Right. So in your view, is the decision easier or more straightforward or a clearer decision in a district that is a certain, shape or demographic, or than a district that is quite different? Is it a more straightforward, clearer decision?
I don't think the decision is ever easy, because whatever the district, it might be a rural district, but you know, a truly rural district, let's say Waimate, there is the farming community and there's the town community. So there is always different interests at play. I don't think, I can't think of a situation where it's an easy decision to make. I think the decision is best made not on a, oh, we've got winners and losers, or this person's shouted really loud, I feel sorry for this person, or whatever. It's about, we have a taxing system, and that's another thing I should have mentioned earlier. The courts are very clear that rates fundamentally are a tax, so that they're not fundamentally a payment for services. So you don't think of them in that way. I mean, people do, but actually they're fundamentally a tax. So thinking of it as a tax, I think the best way to be able to make a decision and be comfortable with it is make it on first principles. Make it on what is good for the future of this community, what is good in terms of overall concepts of equity through the whole community, rather than being particularly concerned with one interest group, because there will always be, in every situation, a variety of interest groups with different points of view.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for that explanation. Yeah, and as you say, it's our ability to understand our own communities and understand the submissions that have been placed for us today and making that decision around that. So Donna, should we continue?
Yes, well, would you like me to run through through the feedback?
Oh, yes.
Summary of the feedback?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. As I said earlier, 652 submissions, which is representative of around about 2% of our ratepayers. Approximately 51% of our ratepayers live outside the district, and these ratepayers were represented by 37.5% of the respondents. So that actually was, I feel that we were able to reach, that we did reach that demographic, which was good with our consultation.
Yep.
The respondents were asked to indicate on the form where they spent most of their time, and interestingly, 286 of those submitters were in Mercury Bay. So the biggest representative on that submission of those submissions came from Mercury Bay. And overall, when we asked them which option do you prefer, 56% preferred status quo for proposal 1, 29% just the straight, capital value with the targeted rates adjustment, and 11% for capital value. And so we also looked at we broke it up by community as well to have a look, and that's on page 13.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite interesting, that figure there, and that shows again, what different communities they feedback from the different where they live, but also what option they preferred, and that shows the split between option 1, 2, and 3. So you can see there quite clearly where the preferred options lay.
Yeah.
Interestingly as well, the next graph down, we broke it up by residents and non-residents, and that showed that 70% of residents preferred the status quo, whilst 44% of non-residents preferred the land value to capital value with a targeted rate change. So there's some differences there. I'm not going to go through all the option feedback because I'm assuming that you've read that in detail, plus had a look, obviously, at all the submissions, and this was just, a high-level breakdown of those submissions. I think it's important to understand that the majority of the responses that we found when we were reading, that they were focused on personal impacts of the proposals. Many of the respondents in the feedback cited how the changes would affect their own rates as the primary reason for their views, which is understandable because they could go on the fair share calculator and have a look at that. There was lots of comments about affordability, fairness, equity, often reflecting their own individual circumstances. As Jonathan mentioned, as council, the role is to probably think and making decisions is to think of wider and think of the broader considerations such as like social equity and principles that actually underpin an equitable rating system. Those things were less commonly addressed in the feedback, and but that is something that when you're thinking about the decisions that you're going to make today, that should be front of mind. I'll leave it there. And
okay, yes. So before I just put it out to councillors' comments, Jonathan, you want any comment on the feedback to date that you'd like to comment before I ask the councillors their views?
No, nothing more than I've mentioned. Yeah, you have to take all this feedback into account. That's the nature of consultation. You also have to think about, does it represent all of the views that would, and does it represent all of the judgments that are the judgments that you as the deciding body have to take into account? So I don't think I can say much more on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, councillors, we've had some feedback on the consultation, and anybody who'd like comment? Martin, did you have a hand up?
So if I may ask a question of
Donna
and possibly Peter. So you pointed out before the two graphs around Thames Coromandel residents and non-resident property owner, and to me this was the most striking part of the whole feedback. Do you, and we're talking 70% status quo for residents and then 36% status quo for non-residents. Do you have or does staff have a feeling, maybe even Jonathan, about why that might be? Is it possibly because with having houses, property elsewhere, they've had experience of the capital value? So I've asked you a question and then given you a possible answer. Sorry.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, through the chair, we did think about that, didn't we, Peter, when we were looking at the discussion and at the results. And yes, we believe that probably is one of the reasons, is that they are used, that the people who are non-residents are probably used to the capital value rating system. I think, yeah, and the 70% for residents, that was interesting. And it sort of made me wonder whether we had done enough to with the options to actually show, what the effect was. Again, it could also be because of what Jonathan's already explained to you, is that the people whose rates are going to increase were more likely to submit than those that weren't. We couldn't analyse that 70% down any further because we didn't collect we don't collect addresses or anything like the details, so we weren't able to go and have a look to see categorically whether that was the case. But we did have a look at some of them that we could look at, and that definitely was a factor. And some of it was with some of the feedback that was provided addresses, so we could check that. But Peter, do you have any views on that?
Sorry, nothing further than what you've added, but other than that, you probably will see when you're going through all of the details of those submissions that, yeah, in those status quo options, many of them did raise the impact on their properties and the expected impact, and that probably drove some of the residents where the understanding around capital value isn't as strong as those non-residents.
Delhi.
I think there's a danger in analysing why people have selected a particular option, and in good faith, it costs us an awful lot of money to go out for consultation. And I believe that the team did a fantastic job. And one of the things, you said, you tried your best with the consultation, and the feedback I got in Mercury Bay in particular, that they loved seeing staff out in the community and explaining things to them. So actually, I think, pat yourselves on the back. That was great. And it's reflected. Mercury Bay had a lot of respondents. I'm going to go against my natural nature, as people know me as a politician, and to say I'm very uncomfortable about social engineering. And I know we've had the equity question raised in workshops and discussions, and I'm looking at the results of the consultation. To me, they're quite clear that the majority of people actually want the status quo to remain at land value. Whether or not they've looked at the calculator and gone, oh, bugger, my rates are going to go up by $500, it's a blunt tool. There are a lot of people that I know that I've talked to quite impassioned about the fact that they have built a nice home to retire to, but they're only sitting there with a pension as an income. So as a blunt tool saying, you've got a nice house, therefore you should be able to pay more money, doesn't sit well with me. To me, it feels like if I turn up to Coco down the road to buy a coffee in my Audi, perhaps I can pay $10 for that cup of coffee, but Peter turns up in his beaten up, 1970s Mini, and, oh, mate, you can have $3 for your coffee. The people I've talked to have talked about the services they get. So if you were going to look at equity and someone did have a 5-bedroom house, the metering of water and the ultimate metering of wastewater is a better indication of how much of the services are being utilised by that household. In terms of rubbish, do they generate a hell of a lot more rubbish? I don't know. But I think as a blunt, socially equitable tool, I'm very uncomfortable with capital value rating, and I will be voting for the status quo as my community has mandated me to do.
Robin.
Just to take us way back, I did wonder whether it would be appropriate at this point, before I say what I have to say, if we needed to do anything in regards to the recommendations, because we do have a recommendation to receive the feedback. Would that be a good time to do that now so that we can have a discussion procedurally?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Robin, we'll do that for you.
Well, thanks. Well, in that case, I'm happy to move recommendations 1, 2, 3, and 4, which receive the feedback and agree to accept the feedback and considers that all. Sorry, I'm doing your job, Terry. Got
So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Just
Okay, so
procedurally.
I'll read those out there. The Thames Coromandel District Council receives the feedback and decisions on the rating review consultation report dated 15th May 2025. 2, receives the feedback on the rating review proposal document. 3, agrees to accept the late feedback items on the rating review proposal. And 4, notes that it is considered all written and verbal feedback provided on the rating review proposal. Do I have a mover?
Yes.
You do. Do I have a seconder, Dali? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Okay.
Okay, I'll go now. I really appreciated the document. Thank you both and all of the people who are involved. I also have genuinely appreciated Jonathan's comments on this. I think the thing that was the most impactful about the document for me was page 16, the 2 paragraphs immediately preceding the discussion about proposal 2, where it talks about the misunderstandings circulated during the campaign by a small group, et cetera, et cetera. Because certainly my experiences of talking to my community about this and people approaching me in places and being available to be approached were that once they understood exactly what it was that we were trying to achieve, they would generally favourable. And I would remind my fellow councillors that leadership is not always a very comfortable place to be sitting. And we did agree through numerous workshops and right at the very beginning that affordability, fairness and equity were right up there with what we wanted to achieve. And this shifting to a capital value system seems like it ticks all those boxes for me. Just returning to those 2 points on page 16, we as a group of elected representatives for our communities have sat through workshops after workshops after workshop. We've read the feedback, we've listened to what people have to say, And I think that we are actually in a better position to be able to make a decision than some of the people who provided feedback, particularly if misunderstandings were well, were rife within the community. And so for that reason, I'm extremely happy to support option 3. And I'm just really asking you to use your best judgment on what you've learned over the whole process of how many months have we been doing this, Donna? Like forever. And bring that knowledge and that experience. And like Jonathan said, the pledge that we had to serve all ratepayers in our district. And I want you to bring that to the table for this discussion, because I think we need to think much more broadly about our communities and who they want to be.
Thank you, Robin. Len.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a procedural thing, please. Not so important for the votes that have just been held for those recommendations, but the ones coming up. Please don't forget myself and Gary online. It's important that our votes are counted. So I'll put my vote in favour, and you might want to just check with Gary, please, for the last ones. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Certainly. Gary, were you supportive of those 4 recommendations we did at the start? Gary, you there? So not sure where Gary's gone, but yeah, I didn't hear anybody saying no. So against. Anyway, we'll hear.
Sorry, I'll try to leave my mic on when the votes are coming up, so that that's counted. But thank you, Terry.
Yeah.
No,
okay.
I was listening.
Yeah. And you're happy with those 4
yeah.
recommendations? Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, so yes, Delly?
Yeah, I appreciate my colleagues' impassioned kōrero. But I do beg the question that, yes, we've had workshops and we have had a lot of information, and we have in some ways been encouraged and driven towards a particular outcome. But the danger lies in going out to a community that is cynical about consultation, and the risk of sounding like we're predetermined before we've gone out for consultation. And then we get quite a clear mandate when we actually do go out for consultation, and then we choose to ignore that and to go with a discussion that we've had before we went out to the community. So that's my concern.
Okay, anybody else at the moment? Okay, so so I think you'll find that a lot of the information was part of, we had several consultation documents out there, so I was quite pleased, and I thought this one rated high above all the others with the feedback that I got. But the decision made by most people is a selfish decision, which is fair enough, because it's about their place and what they see it. So I would see that there would be a fair amount of this information flowing through to say where they currently felt, where they fitted with this, or they want to move forward. So it's given me a pretty clear indication of what, from my understanding from the word amongst the community and what reading the consultation submissions, the direction. But yeah.
Can I just make a comment? Because I'm in Auckland City, we have a number of targeted rates, which actually, if you use X amount of water, you pay for that. And if you do other things, and sometimes you're subsidising transport costs, but that's just whatever goes on your targeted rate. And we really don't use targeted rates very much. And I'm just wondering whether that could add a bit more equity to the situation.
Okay, Gary, thank you. Len?
Thank you. Look, maybe a question for Donna, just for clarification, Donna and Peter. 44% of non-resident ratepayers supported going to capital value. Did I get that number right, Donna, in the submission feedback?
Sorry, Len, could you just repeat that?
44% of non-resident ratepayers voted or gave feedback in favour of capital value rather than land value. Did I get that right?
44% for land value to capital value plus the targeted rates move.
Okay,
Because
right.
you've got to remember that option 2 was also land value to capital value. So those people were also in favour of that.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And look, I read through that, and my situation is similar to some. I'm not a non-resident ratepayer, but I do have 2 properties. And the other day I got a bill or a note from the real estate agent saying, look, the house needs painting, the roof needs washing, there's some cost involved. For me, having that second property is a choice. I can choose whether I pay the cost and maintain that property and keep it, or I can sell it. If I sell it, it doesn't affect my living situation. I've still got a house to live in. And what occurred to me as I'm looking through that is there are heaps of people, and number of people in the Thames area and on the West Coast area, and also in parts of Whitianga and Whangamata, who only have their home to live in. And if the rates are kept at land value, is the equity going to be fair for them when they have no choices? If you only have your one property, you have no choice about where your rates land. So I started thinking about that, and I thought, well, if I'm responsible as a councillor or mayor, what is my position going to be on the equity position here? And I kept coming back to, I think we've got to make a decision which is fair and equitable for the people who haven't been able to have a voice, who haven't necessarily made a submission, for the 10,000 or so, 11,000 people. And as Jonathan said right at the beginning, those 11,000 people are probably the ones that are less likely to make submissions, the ones whose voices we haven't heard. And so we have a degree of responsibility to speak for them. And that's where I land on that. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Len. I think just to comment on that most people can decide where they want to live, whether it's capital land value. You'll find people, if their rates are too high and they can't afford it, they'll move, sell up and move. And that's a concern, but that's what part of the people make a decision. And yeah, we should consider all those points for sure. So John? John G.
Thanks very much. And again, appreciation for all the work that has gone into this. It's been a really big exercise and very well presented. So I thank staff very much for the effort that has gone in to the work on this. It has created a lot of interest and a lot of discussion around the place, which is quite interesting when you look at the amount of consultation that we're actually doing. That this one has, had more than its share of the space of the community in regard to discussions. Look, I share the views that a lot of people have expressed. I probably see things slightly differently to some of the comments that have been made. I think the job of an elected member is broader than just translating the specifics of feedback that we've got in. We have to actually make a call as to what we think is the best for the district, and taking into account feedback. It doesn't mean that we always have to follow the feedback, because we get a small percentage of people who actually provide feedback. And I think that's a very important thing. Elections have been won and lost on tax, and this is a tax. I'd be really personally disappointed if I was making a decision, if I was looking at re-election based on what would be a favourable choice for my own personal position. I think that would be the wrong way of looking at things. I think the hard choice that we have to make as councillors here today is one of what is best for the district going forward. And we have a unique district because 52% of the people don't live in the district. They come and visit the district. And they've given a really clear message, very strong message that they're comfortable with the capital value. We've had less of them give feedback than the residents. And then we look at the residents and I go through that information. I see a large number of them referring to the personal impact that it will have on them. And I wonder what would have happened if we didn't have that calculator, and what decision they might have made if they weren't able to see the individual impact on their own properties. Because at the end of the day, I sit there and have a look and go, well, if I've got an empty lot or section, and next to it I've got a place with a building on it and a house, one is going to use a lot more services than the other. And that's as blunt as this rating system really is, because it's around the equitable state of how we actually charge for services. People have to drive to those properties. People use our roads. They use the services of libraries and other facilities that we create and do. And as a result of that, we must have to charge people for being able to provide that level of infrastructure and service. And while I've had some really passion pleas, and I've read some very strong articles in local papers around the place, I have looked past that to say, what is best for Thames Coromandel? And I have heard the staff tell us that there is a lot more options and flexibility in the rating system if changes are made. And I also look at the situation in regard to how I would see the personal equity. I completely remove from all of my thinking what it means to me. And I look at the feedback that I have got on balance from the non-resident ratepayers and the resident ratepayers, and that leads me to a conclusion to say we have looked at this several times in the past as a council. We have looked at it again during this period of the council, and now is time to make a decision around what is best for the future of the council. And we need to be strong in regard to that from our own personal point of view and make the right decision. And I believe the right decision is to support a move from a blunt land value to a capital value, and I'll be supporting that today.
Thank you, John. Anybody else on this list? Delly?
I just want to push back on, with respect, the Mayor's comments around 2 properties. I actually don't think that's relevant here. And I also want to emphasise that we can't cherry pick which consultation results we will take notice of. So whether or not we're going to utilise the absentee ratepayer results and say, that's great, that's clear indication, but all the other people who voted have actually voted for very selfish reasons. I think a lot of people would have voted for the current Labour Act coalition for very selfish reasons.
Mr. Chair, it's not, we haven't been out to have a vote on this. It's just consultation. It's just people giving feedback.
Totally understand that, but I will re-emphasise the cynicism in the community that we go out for consultation at great expense to then say, well, you know what, we've had a whole pile of workshops and we'd already come to a conclusion, so the consultation was a little bit tokenist, if I can please say that.
Okay, so Martin?
I note that we're kind of in the expressing our opinion, but I did still just have one question from the feedback. Is that possible is that okay to still ask a question?
Ask a question.
Cool. So there was some comments in the feedback about how some people's opinion was that capital value rating discouraged upgrades, especially in lower income areas, and how people would be I think one submitter said people would just be building batches instead of houses. Is there, and maybe Jonathan might give his opinion as well, is there evidence of that, or are people pretty much going to say, well, actually, I'll build the house I can afford rather than build a batch and not have to pay as high rates?
Through the chair, I think it's important when looking at the individual feedback as well, and which is why with the feedback here that we tried to use the words some, many, and few to indicate how many, people kind of said what when we were trying to group them up. And I believe that was very few that did say that. I mean, that could be somebody's perception if that they wouldn't want to build because of that. I guess the other view that is if you if you are living in the Coromandel or having a holiday home in the Coromandel, part of your being able to live here is to pay rates, and that I would have, wouldn't you factor that into the cost of having a property here? Yeah. So it's a personal choice whether you want to build a batch or a multi-million-dollar house.
It is a personal choice.
Yeah.
Most budgets go out the window anyway, but so, hey, John Morrissey.
Thank you, Terry. I've sat here and I've really listened hard this morning. I really, really have. It's been great discussion. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge you, Peter, and Donna for the hard work you've done. And Donna, I remember when this was first mooted that we'd go through this process, that you raised your eyebrows and been there and done that before. And I said, we'll get there this time, Donna. And here we are. It's crunch day. So well done for all the work you have put in. I honestly walked into this room today and I shared with a couple of the councillors that I couldn't, it was just such a hard decision to make today. And listening to the talk around the table has really helped me immensely. And I go back to why we started this process, which was fairness and equity. And that raised me up an awful lot from down in the weeds up to where I should be. And one of the best speeches I've heard around this table was the one given by John Grant, who summarised everything. Absolutely nailed it, John. So well done. This is a brave decision, and we do have to take the election out of it, and we do have to be true to ourselves. And so if I do that, and I go back to what we initially started with, which was looking for fairness and equity around the district, then I absolutely am 100% in behind Robin and John with their thoughts. And I don't need to say any more than that because it's been so well said.
Thank you, John. Just got Len and Rika.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a point of clarification for Adele raised about my comments about having a second property. My point there was that I have a choice. And a couple of other people have raised the same thing. If you have a second property, you have a choice. If you live in a pensioner flat or a small flat that you own and you don't have a second property, your choices are very, very limited. So that was my only point saying that. That was all.
We got that, Len. Thank you. Rika?
Morning, thank you. So I want to start by echoing the comments that my colleagues have made around thanks for the work that's gone in. I know it's been massive and it's been really eye-opening for me and just really actually cemented my understanding even further around our ratings. So I really appreciate the workshops and the amount of time and even this document. It's been great. So thank you so much. I was really concerned, and I think when we went for that vote around taking this out for consultation, I was one of the ones that wanted to see this delayed because I was worried that the community would sort of feel a bit of fatigue for consultation. We had 3 big items out, but I'm really pleased that the community got in and submitted and that we have some really good data and have an understanding of how they think and feel about this. And I absolutely don't think it's appropriate for us to ignore that feedback and pick and choose and highlight what we like the looks of. The community has come back They've given us a strong indication, and I absolutely don't think we can ignore that. I had a question for you, which was around, it talks about you had 4 iwi consultation sessions. Do we know whereabouts in the district, or, what iwi we engaged with?
Peter, you attended. I didn't attend those hui's, but Peter did, so he may be able to provide that.
Yeah, they were all online sessions as part of the regular engagement which is being developed. I will need to come back to you on exactly which groups those were.
Okay, thank you.
That you?
No, I had another question, and that goes to Donna, really. And when we go through and put a resolution forward and vote on it, are we able to pick up elements from the different options, or do we have to look at one option in its entirety? For example, are we able to, in option 3, you've got some elements around waste collection, district transport, building control. Are we allowed to pick parts of those up in our resolution?
So through the chair, what there is a word of caution in doing that, because if you look at rather general rate, so both those options are either taking or putting funding out of or back into the general rate. And with that option 3, we only modelled those options under capital value. So that hasn't been, the effect of that hasn't been modelled or consulted on under land value. So there is a risk, albeit quite small, but I mean, Jonathan may have a view on that as well. But yeah, I think it would be a word of caution in going down that route.
So we have a rider in our paper which says all of this is subject to legal review.
Yes.
And so that won't be confirmed until.
Yes. Yeah, so just to confirm that was with Jonathan having a review, and basically the review was about the recommendations or the resolutions to make sure that, whatever of those resolutions ended up being the ones that were adopted, that they were legally sound. And Jonathan confirmed that this morning that he was happy with the resolutions. So.
Thank you. That's all from me.
Jonathan, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, it's really just endorsing what Donna just said. It is a consultation principle that the information you put out to the community gives them a fair idea of what the scope of decisions will be at the end of the process. So on the face of it, the scope of decisions looked like a series of options. If you come up with an outcome which is not quite one of those options, then there is at least the possibility of an argument that you've made a decision that's outside the scope of what you said you were going to do. But I mean, the other thing I'd say about that is, well, it's broadly within it, except that, as Donna just pointed out, taking the option, I think it was option 3, without also changing to capital value, it does mean it's a situation you haven't communicated to the community or indeed modelled. So there's a low level of risk. The level of risk would be determined by how much of an impact that has, whether it would be so much of an impact that the community should have known about it before you decided to do it. So if that was an option you're thinking about, then it might be worth doing a little bit more work on it before you decide to do it.
Okay,
I'm not ruling it out. I'm just saying you might want to think about it a little bit.
Okay. Okay, so Peter, I think you had your hand up.
Just reiterating all the comments about what an incredible job this has been from you, Donna, and the team. And I think over the last 3 or 4 days, as we've had to apply our minds to this decision and going back over the notes and the things that we have discussed. It just brings home to me how huge of the huge volume of and professionalism of the work that's been done. So thank you very much. My second comment would be that this has been a really useful discussion from my point of view. The some of the comments that have been made are really good clarifying comments, and that's helpful. I think, Jonathan, your comment that we're talking here about a tax, not a payment for services, is a good thing for us to be reminded of, that this is not a payment for service, that it is a tax to provide those things that our district needs. We've always known that there were going to be winners and losers, and kind of there was no surprise in that, but that was the advice that we have been getting, that there will be winners and losers. And that gets reflected, I think, a lot in the feedback that we've had. Jonathan, also, your comment that we need to be thinking about, go back to first principles. And that's reinforced, I think, with some of the comment, like John saying, we need to take out any factors related to elections, etc., and going back to first principles. So when we embarked upon this, and I wrote down in my book, the benefit of doing this is because it addresses affordability, equity, fairness, transparency, and in my notes I had, and would help with internal efficiencies in the organisation. And that last point got roundly rebutted by staff that no, we should not expect internal efficiency. So the benefits then, in my mind, became fairness, affordability, equity, and transparency. Then we go out. Then what we find out is that there is that those first three, at least, are very subjective, and the report points that out to us, that how you judge a fairness and affordability and equity is a subjective thing, and that people do interpret things differently, and so that I think we have the same around the table here. That how do we assess, how do you quantify whether something is fair and equitable and so on? The thing I did like, or I do like, about what we're proposing is the elements that relate to transparency, where we're suggesting that we need to be very clear about roading and rubbish and UAGC and so on. And that, I think, are steps that we're proposing that will do something in regards transparency. The consultation that we have undertaken has been huge, and I think there's a fantastic lessons in there for us about what we need to do to actually get community to be engaged, and we have had a phenomenal amount of engagement with the community. But when I read the feedback, it seems that not everybody, but it seems that a high proportion of feedback relates to the calculator, and people naturally going to the calculator, and if I'm up, then that's not good, and if I'm down, then that's good, and how does that influence the feedback? And I perhaps would add to that, I was disappointed there were 3 occasions where I heard elected members speaking about the rate review, and in all 3 cases, the audience was directed to go online and look at the calculator and see how does that going to affect your property, and therefore give us your feedback, rather than presenting in those meetings the reasons that we were proposing what we were proposing. So I think I was disappointed that I didn't feel in those meetings that I was involved in that there was a clear steer, commitment or belief from elected members and what was being presented to communities. And so I wonder, therefore, if we've ended up putting our communities and our ratepayers on the back foot. We're not giving them the clarity about the benefits of what we see and what was being proposed. I had questions about the transition plan, and I sometimes wonder if we had, in that consultation, had actually outlined the basis of what a transition plan might look like, so that people envisage, okay, this might not affect me now, but with this transition plan, it's going to come in over 2 years or 5 years or whatever it might be. And that's coupled with the fact that a lot of people that I have spoken to, and it's come through to a certain extent in the documented feedback, that we're in tough economic times and I can't afford to have my rates go up by that amount. And, we hear those stories. And we do have to acknowledge that we are in a time when it is tough, that people are finding it tough out there, and that businesses are finding it tough. And in the feedback we hear from businesses who are saying that, with all that's happened over the last few years, we're trying to get back on our feet. And we know that a move from land value to capital value is going to have a big impact on us. And I think we need to be cognizant of that as well. Ideologically, I do come from a position where I can see the benefit and the flexibility that is in what we are proposing. But at the end of the day, I think we've got the timing not right for our communities. I think because of the economic situation and because of the fact that we haven't clearly brought the community with what we're wanting to propose, I think we've put ourselves in a difficult situation. And so I'm reluctant to say that this is the time when we need to make this call to move to a different basis of rating. I would strongly advocate for those elements I talked about earlier with regards transparency and so on, but I'm of the view that this is not the time that we should be making this change. And I would welcome any comments from around the table that would sway me differently.
Thank you, Peter. Robin.
I feel like this is going to be winding up soon, which is good. But I did just want just rebut. I'm disappointed to hear that around this table that we're ignoring feedback or cherry picking. I think that's really unhelpful language in this conversation. And I'd like to draw you to figure 4 on page 12, which shows the rethinking our rates. Which option do you prefer? Option 1, status quo, 56%. On the other side of the graph, we've got 3 different options that people could choose, 44% of which was not option 1. So on the one hand, we've got 56% of people saying that they wanted option 1. On the other hand, we've got 44% of people saying that they do not want option 1. So I think when you're talking about ignoring feedback, we're either going to be ignoring the group that doesn't want option 1 or the group that does want option 1. So I think talking about using the word ignore is a little bit wrong, I think. The other final point, I have a science background, I have a master's degree in science. I would challenge there to, if you want to talk about there being a statistical difference, I'd be really happy to support an adjournment at this point so we can ask the staff to go away to prove that that is a statistically significant difference.
We'll think about that. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Can I make a little comment?
Yeah, Gary?
What I'm just looking at, as you probably know, in Auckland, we've just had our 24 rates finally given to us. And I'm looking at the breakdown of how rates are paid in Auckland. We have a climate action transport targeted rate. We then have a general rate, which is the big rate. Then we have a natural environment targeted rate, which is not based, that's based on capital value. Then we have a uniform annual charge rate, which is not based, that's everyone pays that. We have a number, waste management, food scraps, that's everyone pays that, is 81 something. Waste management minimum base charge that's for another part of the waste, 63. Then waste management refuse standard, that's 174. Everyone pays that. Then we have a calculation of standard recycling. Everyone pays that. And then we have a water quality non-business, which is based on your valuation. So all I'm saying, it breaks some things down into specifics that everyone pays. That's what I was talking about before, the targeted rate and people paying the same for certain things. And we've gone on a different tack for waste. We have people now having to pay with tags and everything, and that's what causes trauma. If we had a set targeted thing, that half of that would go away. So all I'm saying is that when you, can I just tell you, some of my neighbours are paying 150,000 a year in rates. And
yeah, we don't need to know that. We're just talking about
all I'm saying is they choose to live there and they choose to pay that.
Yeah.
And that is based, the biggest rate is the general rate, which is based on capital value. So I'm simply raising that to say, you know, it's a slightly different scenario, but I'm just looking at it now, and those targeted things that everyone shares. And then we have the others that ultimately goes back to the capital. And I just throw that in because I've only just received my rates, which finally came through yesterday.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Donna's got a quick comment, and they're going to move to John M. and then Martin. Yeah, Donna.
I just wanted to clarify that TCDC as a council, we have a very healthy amount of targeted rates. Probably Jonathan will probably can correct me if I'm wrong, because he would know other places, but I'd say we would be up there in one of the probably most targeted rates in the country. I know there's some in Southland that have probably got double what we've got, but we do have a very healthy amount of targeted rates, and we do have targeted rates for a number of our services that we are able to have targeted rates on.
Yeah.
Can I just ask Donna, what percentage of our revenue comes through a targeted rate as opposed to our other general rate? Like 2/3 or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, approximately there.
2/3 is targeted rate.
Yeah.
Right. So user pays type thing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And we're going to John M.
John M. Okay. I heard you, Peter, say this is not the right time to be dealing with this matter, but if this is not the time, when is it ever going to be the time? This is an opportunity that has just been presented to us through a lot of hard work. And I hear people getting a little bit hung up with the submissions. The submissions were definitely a big part of this, but let's not forget 2% of our ratepayers submitted. That's not huge. It is also interesting that that 2% represents 652 submitters, over half or just on half of which came from one community. Okay, so I ask you, have you really got a very good picture of what the entire district wants? It's an indication of something we've got to consider, but it is, I'll say it again, 2% of the ratepayers. So, yep, certainly worth considering what they say, and it has to be considered, rightly so. But this is the table where all the information has been presented. It's something that we'll take into consideration when making our decision, but it shouldn't be the sole factor or the main factor that we make our decision on. I'll go back to what we're actually here for. What we started off looking for was fairness and equity. And if we go back to those principles, then it's not a hard decision for us to make. And I actually want to move option 3 right now.
We have a mover for option 3, John Morrissey, and seconded by Robin. I'll open this up for discussion. I just want to clarify a couple of things, John, that you said that makes sense to me in 2%, but if you look at the Water's Done Well, which is a major thing, you'll find the numbers aren't very big there at all. In fact, this was greater than that. So people are making their decisions, and council's never had a huge response to a consultation. So we just got to accept what we get and live with it.
I take that on board 100%. Terry, thanks for pointing that out. And it is something we should consider, but we need to keep in mind the actual percentage that haven't actually spoken to us.
Okay, so now we've got a motion on the books. And Martin?
Yeah, my point was just around what Councillor Gottlieb raised earlier on about targeted rates, and I noted that Donna looked like she wanted to respond to that, so she has now responded to that. So
you're happy?
Yeah, I just wanted to get Donna's thoughts on targeted rates. And did you say 2/3 of our rates revenue are targeted rates?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Opportunity to speak.
Sorry, isn't it, we can't have more than 30% as targeted rate. Is that right, Jonathan?
No, through the chair, it's the 30%. Councillor Gottlieb is fixed charges, but there's some there that excludes some of those targeted rates are excluded in that 30% cap.
Right.
Could I just briefly step in there? Yeah, targeted rates obviously are rates that are not the general rate, so they're rates for a particular thing, and so it's fair enough to say that targeted rates are a little bit more oriented in the direction of user pays, and certainly targeted rates that are a fixed amount, either per rating unit or per container or per connection, are somewhat in that category. The 30% relates to the amount of rates that are set on a fixed uniform basis, excluding water and wastewater. And I just note that currently, water and wastewater for most people who are connected, the base amount of fixed amount of rates per property is about $2,500. So that's a base amount, and the uniform annual general charge and any other fixed rates would be on top of that. So there's already quite a high level of fixed amount rating, which is much more than 30%, because the 30% doesn't count those water and wastewater charges. Sorry, I hope I haven't made that more complicated.
And also, if I could just add that we do have targeted rates that are $1 in the value in the dollar as well. So it's not all targeted rates are fixed charges.
Right. Okay, so I'll just check here. I've got Delhi.
Just wanted to make sure that we have a show of hands, and as Gary said before, that we make sure that those people voting online either turn their camera on and have a show of hands or whatever.
I'd just like to go around the room, though. I think everybody needs a chance to speak to this motion before we table it. So,
can I just add one thing? Sorry, I didn't get it delivered. When I'm watching and I'm trying to watch on screen, I can't put the other resolve up. Are you able to put it up on the screen so I can see it? Because it's hard for me. If I go out of here, then I often can't get back in again. So can it go up on the screen so I can just read it properly? Because I tried to log into it and I can't get back in now.
Yes, we'll do that, Gary. Yes. So we do start, say, for John G, come on your side, come down here and around, and we'll finish with Delhi and Len and Gary. You got any comment?
Oh, I think I've probably said what I needed to say. I'll just, reinforce that I think the job that we have today is one for the to help establish a means of how we charge for rates going forward. We've had many attempts in the past at looking at this, and we have done an exhaustive test. I am very aware of the comments that people have made, but on balance, I look at the percentage of those from the total ones, and I feel a responsibility as an elected member to speak for those who haven't spoken, and to look at this in the interest of what is best for Thames Coromandel District Council going forward. So I remain of the view that I'm supporting the motion that is now on the table, and I'd suggest that it's very important that we carefully consider this from the perspective of what is the right structure for us going forward, and encourage all of you to have a good think about that.
Martin?
I have very much been considering the feedback and the consultation. I don't feel that I have necessarily either cherry picked or ignored or were predetermined. I have always had a completely open mind, and about this, I'm happy to say that I've changed my mind several times over the last 18 months. And a lot of the people that I've spoken to, and someone else mentioned it, I'm not sure who it was, when you actually start talking to them about it, their view, they get a little bit more of that understanding, and generally get I've often had the comment that people started off, oh no, I don't like the capital value, and then you get into a little bit of the detail and point out some of the words in the consultation document, and then you're helping those people, helping their understanding. So I think my main thing is when I look at the three little, the up arrow and the down arrow and the up and down arrow, basically saying the thing that stands out for me there is that 11,000 people, which is actually more than a third, will get a greater than 2% decrease. I completely get people's comments around, well, that might push someone to, have to sell their house. But we do have both council and central government rates remission options, and I believe government recently doubled the amount of income people could earn to qualify for central government rates remission. So that gives me confidence that central government are also thinking about rates affordability. So weighing all those things up, and I am wanting to support option 3.
Thank you, Martin. Robin?
Some time ago, probably about 18 months ago, I asked governance to print out a large copy of the declaration that we all said at the beginning of our term to stick it in our members' lounge so we could all see it and read it. And I truly believe that by sticking to option 3, we are faithfully and impartially using the best skills and judgment, doing what is right for the majority of the ratepayers in our district. And so therefore, I'm very happy to support option 3. But I have appreciated the very robust discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. John?
Terry, thank you for the chance to speak, but I'll reserve my right as a mover of the notice of motion to speak last, if you don't mind.
Certainly. Rika?
Thanks. Yeah, so I note that option 3 only has 29% of the respondents supporting it, and I'm really disappointed that my colleagues have tried to sort of marginalise the response that we did have to a consultation. We went out and we said, we want to know what you think. Everybody had the chance to input into that consultation. And I really think, and I would urge my colleagues to really listen and read and look at what we've been asked. We've been asked to support not option 3, but option 1 with 56%. Only 29% of our community have come back and supported what you're proposing. I will not be supporting option 3.
Peter, sorry. Peter.
I don't have anything further to add to my earlier comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Delly?
I'd like to toe talk all what my colleague has just said, and also to highlight what Peter said earlier about the business community being very highly impacted by the change to capital value. At a time, I was at a BA5 in Whitianga on Tuesday, and the word I kept hearing was hard. It's hard. Our heads are above water, but it's hard. So I am going to support my community and the people who got off their chuffs and took part in the consultation, which everyone was able to do. It's a bit like moaning about the current government we've got, but you didn't vote. So I will not be supporting option 3.
Thank you, Delly. Len first.
You're right. Thank you, Terry. Be very, very clear on this, if I may. But first of all, I just want to thank Donna and Peter for the extraordinary amount of work that's gone into this. It's made our jobs, I think, easier to understand and get our heads around what is a complex topic. I'll be supporting option 3, heart and soul. Thank you.
Thank you, Len. Gary?
Thank you. Could you just move it up a little bit more on the screen? Is that the end of it? It's got adopts the following changes to the right.
There's lots
there's
more.
quite a bit more. Okay. Gee. What I'm just trying, as you can see, what I've read out before with what happens in Auckland City, I believe is very much what this is proposing, and is the number of people I've talked to who are absentee owners are like, that's what we used to, capital value. And as much as it's one of those things that it's difficult, I just like more detail on what the targeted aspects. If we can give an example, let's say the moment we're paying, the rubbish goes out and you've got to put your tag on for the red bin. Will that go? And will it now just be a straightforward targeted charge on your rates? Am I right or wrong?
No, that's not going to change it, I think, Gary.
Isn't it? Okay. Right. Okay, well, I'm certainly tending towards this resolution on the simple basis of, what I've been brought up with and dealt with. And it, as someone said, I think it was Jonathan, if you're going to choose to buy another property, then and of course a majority of owners are absentee owners, but they've consciously bought the property, and it just seems that that's probably the fact you have to face. Where I live, the fact I have to face it, I've got to pay hell of a high rate in Auckland, and that's probably a reality. So I'm certainly tending towards option 3.
Thank you, Gary. I'll have my little opinion, then I'll pass it to John to finish before we put it to the vote. So I've engaged with our community quite strongly over this, and I get a very strong mandate to stay the status quo. I had a couple come up to me at the volunteers meeting the other day, who are paying $11,000 a year, and they said, your 7.7% rate rise will make another $800 on our rates, and we're also going to get pinged by this. So they were really concerned that if one became ill, they'd have to sell their house because they use one pension only to fund their rates for the year. So, and I've looked at the numbers, and it's a very strong mandate coming through to say, stay at the status quo. And I'm very strong about listening to the people who want to spend the time and put the effort and put it into a submission and send it to council. I think they add value to my decision, and listening to the community. And I've had very little from the community saying we want to change it based on the information to date. So my feeling is that status quo, and I will not support option 3. John.
I'm not going to say a lot, okay, but I will just mention a couple of things. I think, Rika, you said you didn't want to see the submitters marginalised, and me either. Absolutely not. But I just wanted to bring it into perspective, the numbers that we were actually looking at, okay? The submitters, every submission was important and was counted. The one thing I am going to say, and I think it was you, Delhi, that said it, you're not into social engineering. Well, neither am I. This is not social engineering. Rather, this is having a social conscience. There's a big difference. And I actually really hope that this council has a social conscience and can look at the fairness and equity aspects of this, which is where we started, and make the right decision. So social engineering, no. Social conscience, yes.
Okay, so we've heard from the council. It's concerning to me, before we go to vote, that this should have a strong mandate one way or another to tell the people out there where we're thinking. So I hope whatever comes through from this discussion, that we have some idea that we're giving the right message to our people. So without further ado, I would like to now read out the motion. Can all see it? Are you all happy to see it? Because it's quite a bit of reading. I'm going over the pages. Anybody who's not happy that we can present it as it is on the screen? You all happy? You can read it, understand it? Okay.
Sorry, I just want to put the. I'm looking at the transportation target. So that's going to be a targeted rate, the district transportation and building control. Is that correct?
Yeah, Donna's just going to comment on that.
Through the chair, I can explain that. So currently we have a district transportation and building control targeted rate. What this option 3 would see is that we would take the building control out of the targeted rate, and that would go into the general rate, and then 65% of funding the district transportation activity currently sits in the general rate that would go into the targeted rate. So we would have, in the end, we would have a targeted rate just for roading without it being muddied with having building control in there. So it's clearer.
Sure.
That's what this change will do.
So that'll be like what I read on my rates before. That would be going on each person's rate.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, any other commentary before we put this to the vote? Yes.
So when we talk about the local works and services targeted rates, are they currently land that's just changing? That would change that to a capital value?
Yes, so there's
still be funded locally and spent locally?
Still funded locally, spent locally, but the targeted rate, instead of being based on land value, would be based on capital value.
And another question, Donna, my understanding is you can also have a targeted rate for award. And I'm thinking specifically for maybe a swimming pool or something like that. There can be a targeted rate for a particular ward.
Yeah, you can, Gary, but this is not part of this discussion, sorry.
I know, I realise that, but I'm just simply saying.
Yeah, we hear you, yeah, but no, not part of this discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've exhausted all the questions. We're going to put it to the vote. Yes, we will have hands up and we'll note the Len and Gary's. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4 internally. Len 5.
And
Gary?
And I put my hand up.
Your hand up 6. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Can I have it recorded, please?
You certainly can have your votes recorded. So the motion is passed and we are going to move forward as option 3. Is this the end of the discussion?
That's just through the chair, there's also proposal 2, which we haven't discussed yet.
On the SIRPs.
Yes, on the SIP. So
Okay.
we would need to
Get a,
do that one.
Should we, Mr. Chair, should we adjourn, or is Jonathan on the clock?
is that a question? Okay, so will this take a little bit more discussion? Can we, are you all right, Jonathan, for us, we have a cup of tea and come back in 10 minutes?
Absolutely, so long as I can have a cup of coffee.
Okay, you can have a coffee too. So it's 25 to 11. We'll come back at 15 minutes. Okay, thank you. I was halfway through. So, thank you for getting back. We have Jonathan sitting back in the chair? Well done, Jonathan. And Len and Gary, are you online?
Sure thing. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you. Okay, we are now going to move to page, Donna, what page are we on?
Page 16.
16, yeah. Right, we'll just come down to that. Okay. Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. So with this rethinking our approach to second dwellings, this came about, council asked us to have a look at some possibilities because they've been hearing a little bit from people that had two dwellings on their properties, and we're paying a second SUIP, and there was wanted to look at, the fairness and equity obviously around that, but also what the public thought about that and about some of the options that we put forward that could provide relief for in some of those situations. So the option one was status quo, which means there would be no changes to the SUIP property. Option two would be to change the SUIP policy, which means that what we put out for consultation was that that would revise the meaning of separately used or inhabited parts of a rating unit, so that the additional SUIPs would only be applied to rating units with one or three or more. If you can understand that. So because every rating unit is one SUIP, what this was talking about was more than one SUIP.
So this made the second one not meet the criteria for a SUIP, is that right? With the 1 to 3 was.
So yeah,
so one paid it. If you had a second dwelling, they didn't pay it, but 3 you had to pay it. Am I getting that right?
No, well, I'm not sure. I'll just run through. I'll run through what the options said, and then maybe we can have a chat about it. Yeah, so that's what option two was, a change to the SUIP policy. So that would mean, in effect, that people that had only two SUIPs wouldn't get that second SUIP charge.
2, okay.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
And then option 3 was a change to the rates remission policy. What that would mean is, so currently we have a remission in our rates remission policy that provides a 50% remission to those second dwellings that meet certain criteria. And that criteria is that they're under 50 square metres or under 60 square metres if they've got a LifeMark accreditation. So they currently would get a 50% remission. Option 3 would see those properties getting 100%.
100%, right.
Yeah. So is there any questions on what
Is you all
those options
comfortable
were?
with that explanation? Understand?
Right. Okay. So then move to page 16. That's where where the analysis begins for rethinking our approach to second dwellings. You can see the graphs there similar. We did similar graphs to proposal 1. Shows that 47% of those that responded preferred the status quo. 30% chose the rates remission for the minor dwelling, and 12% the SUIT policy, but there was 11% of people that didn't select any options for that one. And then the following graphs there show you the difference between the residents and non-resident approach to that. As in with proposal 1, we've done a lot of analysis there on the 3 options, and the feedbacks is summarised there for you. We used the same methodology with the many, some or few to put into perspective what the different comments were. I'm happy to take any further questions on those.
Questions? Peter?
Yeah, just so as I looked at those charts, the status quo would mean those people, forgetting option 2, but the status quo option 1 means the people who've responded are saying they're opting not for the 100% rebate on the thing. They're saying we're happy with the status quo, 50% rebate on minor dwellings, etc. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Yeah, comments, absolutely.
So when I look at the figure on page 17, I think the results of the consultation is a lot muddier than the consultation which gave me a clear directive in proposal 1. I've spoken with quite a few of the people who have that minor unit that often it's a mix of family. Over summer, they make a few extra dollars to help pay for their rates because we are quite a highly rated area. For the price of me, I don't have a second SUIP, just to clarify. For the price of a couple of cups of coffee, like a nominal price, I'm happy to subsidise those people. And one of my major reasons for that is that the majority of those people who I've met and talked to, which is quite a few, are not wealthy people who are making pots of money. They're people who wants to change sheets and empty rubbish bins anyway. They're making that extra bit of money to supplement their pension or their, in one case, a very eloquent case, their disability benefit. But what really drives my support of option 3 is the eloquent presentations from the likes of Tairua Pawanui Business Association. So there is a community that has very few accommodation options, and they said, people are starting to go, it's not worth my while. I'm going to shut down my little holiday rental in the summertime because the return is not good enough. So these folks are paying tax to the central government as well. So they're contributing towards national roads and hospitals and God knows what else. But it's the prosperity to those smaller communities and the essential service they actually provide, particularly for our businesses. And okay, not everyone is a business person, that I think warrants that remission. It's a small unit we're talking about. It's not a 2-storey, 5-bedroom house, a small secondary unit, which is bringing that much needed accommodation, particularly over the summer period for our businesses. Just remember that in the communities where there is metering, they pay for their rubbish. So if they've got a unit, they're going to have to buy tags or go to the dump and pay for any extra rubbish generated by having that person there. If they're in Whitianga, they're metered for water. So if their consumption of water goes up, they're going to pay for that volumetrically, which is a very fair way to do it. The other thing, which I think hasn't been utilised well, particularly on the West Coast, maybe people are fearful of that extra rate, is to provide that much needed accommodation. We talked to the aquaculture folks, Manaia, Coromandel. We could increase our operations if there was more housing available. I'm thinking that secondary unit Kaumatua type situation in places where housing is too unaffordable for those elderly to go out and rent their own property. So in summary, less clear in the consultation, happy to have a very, very, very small subsidy in my rates to support these folks providing essential accommodation. And yeah, I would encourage my colleagues to have a think about that from a wider district view. And I think it may, if this change was made, it may enable particularly the West Coast Coromandel to provide a little bit of extra accommodation for their much needed workers.
Thank you, Dally. Robin?
Thank you for raising that extra accommodation. That was what I'd sort of tagged in to do, because as you rightly say, we are short of accommodation. We lack worker accommodation. We've heard from the business association, the hospital, businesses in town that Thames is lacking, and this might lacking in worker accommodation. This might really help. I guess the other thing just to point out is that we've got, according to the table on bottom of page 23. Top of page 24, that at the moment, this would really only apply to 74 properties, but if it worked properly, that would be more than 74 because it would encourage the provision of such accommodation. So happy to support.
Thank you, Robin. We have Peter.
I would assume that anybody who is renting out a property will be conducting a taxable activity, and that would therefore be need to be declared, and that rates would be able to be offset as a cost of delivering that taxable activity.
Martin.
When we were talking about this, I think there was it might have been Judy from Rates who spoke to it last year, that there wasn't really a clear understanding of how many properties had additional SURPs. If we choose option 2 or 3, does that mean a little bit less work for the rates folk in identifying the sort of the smaller, the properties that have got, like, say, one SURP as opposed to that, so they can then concentrate on one where there's 3 or 4 or 5 cabins? Would that potentially free up and make it easier for staff to potentially chase those people and therefore recover some of that money or get additional money? Does that make sense?
I think I know what you mean. So with option 2, which means that you wouldn't apply that second SUIP to second dwelling, that would negate the need for that. I think it's number 7 in our rates remission policy, which is to provide a remission for second dwellings, because currently if that second property or second dwelling rather is used for family and friends for no monetary gain, well then there is a remission, 100% remission, but that has to be applied for every year, and a statutory declaration needs to be made by the owner to say that that property is only being used for family and friends. So if option 2 was the preferred option, well then that wouldn't have to happen. That policy would be gone. I guess if you're looking at it from a purely staff time perspective.
Yeah,
right. I mean, I don't want to purely look at it from that, but I want to be able to factor that in. And for the ones that would then therefore potentially be staff time, be able to be used to check the ones with 3 or more?
So, well,
or is that ongoing anyway?
That's kind of like an ongoing, that is ongoing. I guess with the difference with option 3 is that wouldn't necessarily create any more staff time, because we're already giving an automatic 50% remission. All that would be is an update to the system to say that remission was 100%. So there would be no, there's no impact on basically staff time of option 3.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. John?
Thank you, Terry. Option 2 appears to me, Donna, to be the most clear-cut way to go. The problems we've experienced in the past have often come from mum and dad that have built a second unit for their mum or dad or for their children, and then they get caught up in our SERPs policy. And it's also those people that have actually got a SERP on their property but choose to rent it out for the summer months or whatever. And those seem to be the ones that have always come to council and asking to be excluded or given a rates relief. So to me, option 2 just appears to be very clear cut. Once you start getting into a third SERP on your property, well, then you're obviously in it for some sort of business, and it's really easy to identify. What I've always wanted to do was just make it easier for the mum and dads that are catering for their children or their parents to have that second unit without getting caught up in any of the council regulations and having to apply for emissions and do all that sort of stuff and do it annually. It just seems to me that option 2 makes a very clear cut. Would it be, and I would imagine it would be so much easier for council to administer? Well, there'd be no administration if it was a second unit, just the one unit. Am I right there?
So in terms of the administrative cost moving forward, it would probably not change a lot because we would still need to capture the details around where there are 2 dwellings for when that third may or may not come on. There will likely also be some work required around changes to the system to accommodate that, because as Donna mentioned, at the moment we have a remission in place for option 3 as the example, where that's just a change to the parameters of that option. Option 2 will require a bit of work in the background to change the way those rates are levied. It's not overly substantial, and I don't think should be the driving factor in your decisions, but yeah, there is a slight difference in work required.
Okay. Elaine?
Thanks, Terry. Can I just ask Donna or Peter to clarify option 3 also would not require the declaration to be completed?
Yes, that's correct. Because option 3, the remission that's already in place, the 50% automatic remission,
Right.
doesn't require a declaration. So
Awesome. Thank you.
the only change is that would go from 50% to 100%.
50
So
to 100.
that's to capture the minor dwellings that are rented out for monetary gain, that are, therefore aren't able to get a remission under the policy, the
Okay.
first policy.
Thank you. And you've got in the narrative there, option 3 is council's preferred option. Do you want to just talk to that momentarily, if you don't mind?
Yes, I can. So I guess from the discussions that we've had through the workshops, through the consultation, is that option 3 does provide a remission to or a bit of relief to some properties. I think currently it's about 74, but that could increase. But the other side of it is the impact on the rest of the district is quite small. So and you'll see in the document, and I'm not sure what page, where we talk about that.
Page 23, and it's $65 to $80 to the everybody else's rates.
Yes, so that for proposal for option 2, there would be a bigger impact on the rest of the district, because we'd be wanting, currently we've got about 500 properties that have got 2 SERPs, and that if they all got that, didn't have to pay that second SERP, then that would be a cost of 1.7 million to the district, which would have to be picked up by other ratepayers. And depending on where in the district you are, that cost ranges from about $65 to $80 on
per
everybody
ratepayer.
else's rates. So the reason why option 3 was the preferred option was because it was a balance, so it was able to provide some benefit to those people that Councillor Connell was referring to, that have a very small unit that they rent out sometimes, as opposed to somebody that has got like a bigger unit that rents it out for and is making a business of it. So is that good?
That help you, Len?
It does. Thank you, Donna. I think, sorry, I'll turn the camera on here. So I think we just need to be really clear. If we were going option 2, the impact per ratepayer on the rest of the district and the number of ratepayers involved, I think we need to be really clear about that. And that was discussed in the preparation for this. I think at this stage, I would like to move option 3, please. And then just, if I can get a seconder for that, that'd be great. And then we can just go around the table.
Thank you, Len. Len's moved option 3. Do we have a seconder? Okay, John Grant. Let's certainly, you can ask your question, Della.
So obviously I'm a proponent for option 3, and just to clarify, in comparison, that's about 127,000 at the moment. So for those who are bothered to actually be watching this meeting or to watch it later, what does that mean per rating unit approximately?
It's really, really small. Like, you mean for the rest of the district?
Yeah.
For the rest of the district, again, it depended on where you were, and it was a few dollars. Yeah, average of $5.
Yeah.
Peter's saying.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, Rika.
So just looking, thanks, Terry. So just looking at that, if we then had a flurry of these units being built for people to say, okay, well, I'm not going to be charged the silk charge on this, so let's bang one on for granny or kids or whatever. Obviously, that number will increase. Is that correct? If you build something or create something of that size, so that number will go up. Okay, just wanted to make people aware of that. And just going back to the consultation, we sort of haven't really touched on that. We've just gone straight to the options, and just reminding everyone that 47% of our community wanted to stick with the status quo, and the option that's in front of us, which is option 3, has only had 30% of our community support.
Thank you, Rika. Delly.
I'd just like to push back on that, because 11% no option and 12% option 2, which is all not voting for the status quo, and option 2, of course, meaning a greater burden on the rest of the ratepayers. I did reference the consultation, and I said the waters were quite a lot muddier, that it's not as clear-cut a mandate from the people who responded. So, yeah, I'm still sticking with option 3.
Thank you. Anybody else want to make comment? I'd like a little comment at the end before we move this or put this motion to the table. Yes, Councillor John.
Thanks. Look, I'm supporting this and option 3, and I'm doing that because I am very conscious that we are a district that relies very heavily on people coming to visit us, and we don't have a lot of accommodation. I think we've been referred to as the Tuscany of New Zealand, where people go and stay at other people's places. And as a result of that, we need to think very carefully about how we can provide some support to make that an economically viable option for for people to be able to do that. I think it's an important consideration. It's an aspect of it. It's not the total picture, but it's an important component of it. And for that reason, and for the reasons that I think we don't have a clear view, and from the feedback that has come in, and I'm also very conscious that people who are not impacted will obviously take a particular view on it, and so therefore we have to look at it from a district perspective again in regard to what's right for the district, and that's what's leading me to decide to vote in the way I am.
John Morrison.
Yep, thanks, Terry. To me, this is not solving the problem that I perceived out there, which was trying to help Ma and Pa with their one little unit on their property, supporting family and stuff. Option 2 clearly does that, but option 2 is clearly going to have a big rating impact across the district, and I'm not prepared to actually let that happen either. It's just too high. Option 3, I think you start to get into some just real commercial business, and if it's commercial business with 2, 3, 4 units on their property, then they're in business and they should be paying their fair share. And I did hear what Rika said about, well, this might encourage more of that sort of development, which is good for our tourism, but is actually going to have an impact on us with our rating. So I'm actually going to listen to what the submitters said there. They certainly had a point of view. They're only a small part of the picture, but they certainly submitted that the status quo was the preferred option, and I actually want to go with the status quo.
Thank you. Peter, sorry.
Yes, look, so I'm supportive of this because of really the point that Rika referred to before. We know we've got a challenge in the district for providing accommodation for hospitality workers, for visitors, etc. And if this is some small way that we can send a signal that we are wanting to do something to address those that accommodation and that housing problem, then I think this is a very straightforward and low-cost way of doing that.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, everybody's had a chance to take a chat. I'd like you want to like something else?
I just want to have a little kōrero around the fact that when I reflected on paying my cup of coffee to support these folks doing these little accommodation units, I also reflected that the people coming in who stay in those units, the benefit to me sitting there with no second unit is that more restaurants, more cafes, more facilities, more things are encouraged and built because of the usage of it by the people who come into our communities. So in a way, I do get some side benefits from that. And I certainly know the business community that we've just made capital value for would appreciate this small sort of chocolate bar back to say, yes, we'll help you bring people into your communities to spend money.
Thank you, Dali. Look, Gary, have you got any commentary before I summarize?
No, I'm happy with option 3 for the reasons stated. And of course, now with our new rating system, it will slightly give something back with the capital values approach.
Thank you, Gary. So my little 2 cents worth is accommodation has been the issue since I've come to the Coromandel to live. For the last 12 years, it's been strong through the rural, through tourism, through visitors, through the grandparents, through the short-term accommodation for medical and rest homes. It has always stood up as being one of the biggest issues we're trying to address. So I really support this in terms of giving these people the opportunity to provide some sort of relief to that support. And I think if you look at the tourism number this year, it's up $12 million in spend. So those people were in the hundreds of thousands of people are going to have to go somewhere. So I think by the council coming forward with this opportunity to support those people, it's showing that we are encouraging what they're doing in a way to support the greater growth and economics of the community. So that's my little tuppence.
Could I just ask Donna one question before we vote?
It's a what?
One question for Donna.
Yes, certainly, yes.
How's this going to affect the likes of motor camps with their SURPs, Donna? It's not going to get them at all?
No, there will be no impact
Yeah.
on camping grounds.
Yeah.
They'll still be liable. Yep.
It's only purely those with 2 SURPs.
Yeah.
And also not only two SURPs, but the second SURP has to be a minor dwelling, which is under 50 square metres.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Len, did you want a moment? Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Just to write a reply. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just in summary, point out that option 1, we already have the remission in place, so that there is that there already. It's not a charge for everyone. Option 2, the concern that I think needs to be clearly understood is the $60 to $80 impact on every other ratepayer in the district. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Donna, option 2 would provide a remission of SURP rates on all the campgrounds and the rest homes and the multi-unit entities out there. And option 3 is a minimal impact on the rest of the ratepayers, but also providing some relief for the people providing accommodation for the rest of the district. And that's the reason I'm supporting option 3 and proposing option 3.
Thank you, Len. Thank you.
Can I just to clarify,
Mm-hmm.
option 2 is only about 2 SURPs. So it does, so rest homes, any organisation or anybody with multiple SURPs like campgrounds, retirement villages, that would not see a benefit with option 2.
Thanks, Donna. I was just a little confused on that, so thanks for clearing that up. So thank you.
Thank you, Len. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to, yes. Now we're going to put the motion to the table. This is option 3. Adopts option 3, change to the rates remission policy, meaning resolves to amend rates remission policy statement number 7, rating units containing 2 separate inhabitable units to apply to 100% rates remission of the second targeted rate for water, wastewater, stormwater and solid waste, uniform annual general charge and targeted rates set on a uniform basis for the local works and services to second dwellings that meet the criteria of policy statement C. Do you want me to read out policy statement C, or you're happy with that? Okay, I'd like you to raise your hands in support of this motion. Those in support, raise your hands.
You can see me.
I can see Gary. I can see Len. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those against, raise your hands. 1, 2. Would you like that recorded? Thank you. The motion is passed. Thank you very much.
Thanks, team.
Thank you. That's the no, it's not quite the conclusion. Sorry. One more.
Which is number 7.
Number 7. Yes, sorry. Let me get to number 7. So you speaking to this, Donna?
I can do so through the chair. This resolution is would be resolving that the resolutions that you've made above will take effect from the 2026-27 financial year.
Happy to move, Chair.
Moved by Councillor Grant, seconded by Peter Revel. Well, yes. Any comment? Yes.
Yes, please. So it was mentioned in the rating review about some potential transitional arrangements. Do we, from a procedural point of view, have to put something in there about that, or would that be more something that would be talked about in our next, well, if we're here, our next annual plan?
Yes, so any transitional arrangements, we would need to work through that, bring that to you, what that would look like, and bring you some options with those transitional arrangements. So we envisage that would probably more likely happen either during an annual plan, the next annual plan. If there wasn't an annual plan, we would bring it at some point of what those arrangements would look like.
Okay, so there will be an opportunity to discuss that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that.
So does that make this conditional?
I'll probably let Jonathan. Jonathan can talk about that from a legal perspective. Can you, Jonathan? Thank you.
I put my hand up to say that. Yeah, this might come as a bit of a shock, but next year, the
Just hold a sec, just Jonathan, hold a sec. They were getting some feedback. Just let us sort that out. Gary, can you turn your mic off, please? Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Where you go, Jonathan.
Just you've made the policy decisions, which include amending the revenue and financing policy and the remission policy. But this is for the 2026-27 year and onwards, which means that next year's annual plan will need to address this as a change to the funding impact statement. So it will be a piece of content that'll be subject to consultation, because the implementation of it will generate a change that will require to be consulted on. Obviously, the consultation will be based on the policy decisions that have been made, and that's how it's going to go forward. But it will be up for discussion again, and certainly the transition provisions, they would certainly include and could readily include a change to remission policies, for example, to moderate any, temporarily moderate any very substantial individual changes in rating liability. That could be consulted on in parallel with the annual plan or even after it. But if the transition was to sort of change the capital value decision, for example, to make the targeted rate on land value, then that would probably require a parallel re-amendment of the revenue and financing policy. So yes, you've made the policy decisions, but they're not the implementational decisions. Those will have to be consulted on, and there will be an opportunity to, next year, to look at what might be sort of transitional relief type provisions.
So do we have time to do all that in time for 22, 26, 27?
Short answer is yes. So I mean, the decisions that have been made today, staff will then be able to get that in motion and ready for the annual plan process.
Thank you, Donna. Some work ahead. So we feel comfortable that we can go to 7 now and put this resolution forward. You're comfortable we can do that? Okay. So moved by John Grant and seconded by Peter Revel, resolves the resolution 5 and 6 above it that will take effect to the 26-27 financial year. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against? Len, you're good. Gary? Could be good. Anyway, that's passed. And those against, anybody registered against that I can see? No, that's unanimous then. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jonathan, for your advice and experience. It's been a busy morning, but we've got there. So thank you very much for your attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and well done to you all. Those are always hard decisions to make, and nobody's ever going to be universally happy, but I think that was a very sensible and very coherent debate. So well done. I'll log off.
Thank you. Thank you. And formal meeting will be ended at 12:30, is it right? 11:30. 11:30. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Thank you,
Len.
Terry, for steering us through that. Good job.
We
Good
are now going to just have a couple of minutes to get ready. We've got a workshop now for the Thames pool. Yeah, we'll just come offline and we
So can I just get a little bit of feedback from councillors? We did have a request about having a talk about the